Hello, just Gem here and welcome, or indeed welcome back to my channel. A little while ago, well not too long ago, I filmed a bit of a getting to know you video, and in that I counted how many palettes I had in my collection. I think it was that video that I also said that I could probably do with having a palette declutter, but just from when I was counting, I think I would have struggled to decide what to declutter. And that got me thinking about what would I absolutely not declutter? You know, what would you have to pry out of my hands? I've pulled out the palettes that I think fall into this criteria. I've got them in front of me on my desk and I'm mulling it over, thinking to myself, have I made the right choices here? This is one of those things where I could do this again next month and it could be very different. I mean, I don't think it'd be very different, but maybe there would be a few things I would pull out, but then looking at these ones I've got in front of me, I don't know what I'd take out. So I have 11 palettes out. I was aiming for 10, but then there's kind of 2 palettes here from 2 brands. So yeah, I was aiming for 10 and I couldn't pick between which one of the palettes I wanted from these brands. So I just kept these and I didn't pick a 12th to have a different brand in the mix. So it's an odd number, I know, but it makes sense to me. There is a brand that is missing and it might surprise you. It almost surprises me. But I think, I think I'm right. Let's get going without any further ado. So I'm one of those people, I keep all my palettes in the boxes. It's really bad, apart from my Beauty Bay ones because of the way they come boxed. But everything else, I keep them in the original packaging. So the first palette, and this I could never get rid of because... So there are some palettes in here that I'd never get rid of, and one of the main reasons is because I couldn't get it back again if I wanted to. So there's quite a few palettes here that would fall into that category. And number 1 is one of those, and it's Urban Decay Electric. This is one of the very first palettes I bought and used, and that got me really into eyeshadow, especially colourful eyeshadow. So this is back in the day when Urban Decay, I think, were absolutely killing it with everything that they were bringing out. They had the sort of OG Naked series, like the OG, none of this Naked Honey, Naked Multi-Dimension, Naked, whatever the hell they're releasing these days. This is when I think Urban Decay was at its peak. And I think this is just, it's a pretty out there colour story, but it just got me into bright, bold, colourful eye looks. And I also had Full Spectrum, and I remember I bought them at the same time. And when I bought them, I just assumed that I'd be all about Full Spectrum. And Full Spectrum is actually a palette I've decluttered. I gave it to a friend of mine, because I would reach for this so much more. I was really surprised. I really thought that Full Spectrum would be the one. But for me, Urban Decay Electric, I think, kind of paved the way into my love of colourful eyeshadow. Next up is a Pat McGrath palette, and it is Mothership Subversive La Vie en Rose. So it's one of those 6-pan trifold palettes. That's what it looks like on the inside. It matches what I'm wearing today. As a purple lover, you will know that this is probably of no surprise. This falls into the category of you can no longer get it. So I would never declutter this because I think it's a beautiful 6-pan palette. Beautiful, I love it. There's every single shade is, I don't know how to explain it. I went through a phase where I would just hammer this purple and I'd wear it with everything. But then I also did a few more sort of understated looks where I'd use some of the other shades and I'd leave that purple out. Is this my first Pat McGrath palette? I think this and, was it the mini bronze? Because they were released around the same time. So I bought these, they were on sale, but I decided not to keep the bronzy one. This is when I was fully in my colourful era, so electric sort of showed me the way and I was really into the colourful vibe, and then I acquired this, and this I think started my love of Pat McGrath. I sort of fell in love with this. I loved the formula and it made me want to try more Pat McGrath. Never decluttering it. We kind of are going in a chronological order of sorts, at the very least from when I acquired them, not necessarily age, but they somewhat link. The next one is the Jackie Aina ABH palette, and that's what that looks like on the inside. Again, purple. Has all of these got purple in them? Not all of them. Most of them. This has got a bit of sentimental value as well, because Jackie Aina was like my makeup god. Like, I followed her advice for pretty much everything. She said that NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer was the best, so I got NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. And when she did this collab with ABH, it was just so amazing to be able to pick up a palette where I knew every single shade in here I would be able to use without hesitation. I wouldn't have to think about how I could use it. I could just go for it. And ABH again is also one of those brands where at a certain point they were killing it with their eyeshadow releases. They did lull a bit, and they were releasing some in quick succession. So I don't know that this palette really got the attention that it deserved, because it was sandwiched. It was around the time that there was a collab, I think, with Alyssa Edwards. Riviera came out. There was just a really quick succession of releases from ABH, and I know that this rates highly in a lot of people's collections. A lot of people really do like this palette, but I still feel like it was overlooked a little bit, and I wish it had had more time to shine. I think it deserved more attention. And ABH in general, I love that you can use the quads. So should I just get rid of that? So you can do a look with these four, or these four, or these four. You know, that's how it's designed. So if you're feeling a bit stuck and you're lacking a bit of creativity, you can just pull out an ABH palette, pick a quad, create an eye look. I've always thought that that was something that was really great and really useful about ABH palettes. Definitely one I'd never declutter. Plus, look at that packaging as well. The next palette is Natasha Denona Metropolis, and that falls very much into the category of I'm never getting rid of it because I would have a tough time acquiring it again. And this was a palette that someone decluttered and gave to me, and I cannot tell you, I mean, I was beside myself when they were like, oh, do you want it? And I was like, yes. So yeah, they packaged it up and sent it to me. Possibly there's a few sort of browns in here that are a bit redundant, like you may not need them as such, but on the whole, I just love this colour story. It's autumnal, it's earthy, it's moody, it's got some warmth to it. I just think Metropolis is an exceptional palette, and it's a shame it was limited edition, to be honest. I feel like this deserved to be a permanent palette. When I look at the things that Natasha Denona is releasing now, what was the last palette? I mean, the last palette I actually bought was My Dream. That's a beautiful palette. It hasn't quite made the cut in palette that I would never declutter, because if I was going to pick one palette from the brand I'd never declutter, this would be it. Whereas the palettes before have definitely had that purple vibe. where I'm massively into my purple. This has definitely got the greens, and it's got a little bit of blue in there as well. A little bit. Natasha Denona Metropolis. Love that palette. This is a brand that I've turned on notifications for when they post on Instagram, because I want to know when the next big palette launches. And the palette in question here, Byredo Mineralscapes. And that's what the palette looks like inside. Tell me that's not beautiful. When I got this, I could not put it down. I used it all the time. And I don't know, I don't think I expected to love this palette as much as I do. It almost, I mean, looking at it here, it almost looks kind of a bit nondescript. There's a few sort of pops of vibrancy, but that, I mean, it looks very muted, and it is muted to a certain extent. But it's just got this beautiful application. I think there's only 2 mattes in here, but the way the formula is designed, you can, some of the shimmers are a bit more satiny, so you can use them the way you would use a matte that's in a palette. It's more versatile than it looks. It's got greens, it's got blues, it's got purples, it's got these sort of mauvey pinky tones, it's got gold in there. I can't speak more highly of this palette. I think it's stunning. And again, sometimes when they make these things in limited edition, I just feel bad for anyone who wasn't able to get hold of it, because it's just beautiful. I'm resisting the urge to just dig my fingers in there and just get a bit swatch happy. And again, it does fall into that category of I wouldn't declutter it because I couldn't buy it again. But I mean, I just wouldn't declutter it anyway, because why would you declutter this? And I think I mentioned it at the time I did the initial review. I was late to the Byredo party, and I kind of looked at the palettes historically, and this, apart from the really sort of rainbow one, which I can't remember what it's called, it might have been called Kalahari. I don't know, I might be making that up. One of them was called Kalahari, but apart from the really, really sort of rainbow coloured one, the others that had come out didn't really appeal to me, so I'm glad I found them when this was released. And I'm keeping an eye for the next one to see what they bring out this year, because I've already set aside the money, because I'm cute. I think I might get this. Well, not this, because you can't get this, but Byredo's £18 palette that they're going to be releasing this year. March, April time, I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled. You're probably not going to be surprised by this. I mean, probably a lot of you are waiting for this to appear. Do you want to pause and see if you can guess which palette I'm about to show you now? It's New Zealand Stargazing. Oof! I'm beginning to wonder, purple must be my favourite eyeshadow colour. I think almost all of these have had purple in it in some shape or form. But just how beautiful is this palette? And again, it matches what I'm wearing. Let's not beat around the bush here. Yeah, this is basically an expanded version of that. But I wouldn't declutter either of them. I wouldn't. So part of people would say, but you know, if you've got this, you really don't need that. Yeah, possibly, but I couldn't. I couldn't. There's a little bit of yeah. Maybe I'll pull these out together, and I'll do some comparison swatches at another time, and maybe I'll do like a look with both. I'll do a look one on each eye, and you have to guess which palette is which. So I'm just resisting the urge because I don't want to get shimmer all over me. I just love the richness, basically, of this palette. I think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And like, it's New Zealand Star. I can see the galaxy in these shades. I just love this palette. I just love this palette. Nomad Cosmetics, New Zealand Stargazing. Stunning. This was one of the palettes that made a lot of people's top 10 last year. I think it made a lot of people's top 10. Am I just making that up? No, I think this rated highly among a lot of people. I think so. And I've mentioned that a lot of these palettes have all got purple in there. This one is no different. The palette in question here, Longing. I just think this is a beautiful colour story. In this scenario especially, I love Blend Bunny's gradient format. I think it really lends itself to this colour story. I'm trying to imagine it rearranged and being a bit more scattered. I can't. And the shimmers in here. The only thing I would change is potentially putting more shimmers in there, and that would be my only gripe with this palette. But apart from that, and this was a bit, it's funny, I've got really similar colour stories. Let's just bring it out again, shall we? You can tell I've got a particular taste, can't you? Because these aren't worlds apart, are they? They're not worlds apart. And again, someone could probably say, oh, well, you know, you could definitely get rid of one of those. I could. But I wouldn't. Like with Byredo Mineralscapes, when I got Longing, I got firmly attached to Longing. It was almost like I moved from Byredo Mineralscapes onto Longing, and other palettes at the time just couldn't get a look in, and I had to force myself to put each one down so I could use other palettes to be able to do my updates of like, what do I think about it now, which is coming soon, by the way. I kind of went from Byredo Mineralscapes and using that constantly to Longing and using that constantly. Love these muted, cool tones, and I just think the name is just so fitting. This was one of my first Blend Bunny palettes, so I got a few at the same time, and this has been the first Blend Bunny palette that I've used, and it's probably the palette that really put the brand on the map for me. Plus there's the fact that you can now get it easily through Glisten Cosmetics in the UK. This is one of those where probably for, again, maybe there's a sentimental element to it, and perhaps a versatility, Divination is actually better. Give it 6 to 12 months and Divination could possibly take over. But I don't know, I think because Longing is the one that showed off Blend Bunny for me. That's the one that I think I would struggle the most with decluttering. I think so. So Divination is probably one of my favourite rainbow palettes. This one, I just love the colour story. I just love it. I love the fact it's not that Divination isn't curated, and I don't want to cover old ground. It is curated, obviously, but this has more of like a story to it. Like, I understand why it's called Longing, and yeah, I just love it. We get to that point where I've picked 2 palettes from these 2 brands because I just couldn't decide. So this is another one with a lot of packaging, so let me prep this. These 2 I almost didn't pick out because you can still get both, and I thought to myself, it can't just be about palettes that you can't get anymore. It's got to also just be about palettes that you love and you just think are great palettes. I've picked out my Danessa Myricks Lightwork 5 and Lightwork 6. So anyone who's a proper lover of indie brands would probably say meh to these. I don't know. I love that they are special shades all in one place. If you want to, you can just do a look with 5 or 6, or, you know, really push the boat out, do a combination of the 2. I do actually have 5 and 6 on my eyes today, and that's what's that? Yeah, so I actually have 5 and 6 on my eyes today, and that's kind of what ended up tipping the scale for me putting these in almost last minute. These weren't going to go in because you can still get them, and I was just like, no, don't put them in. But I was like, no, it's not just about one palette you can get, just you like them, you enjoy them, they're fun, especially this one. I still have a little fun stacking and taking the pans out and moving them about, and I just love it. Is it perfect? No, there are some shades which I think are too similar, 100%, but I just really like it. I really do. Like, some of these are starting to get hammered already. Just love that. I love them both. Do indie brands have special shades that are better than these Danessa Myricks multi-duo chromes? Yeah, probably. And I may have stumbled across them myself. Well, the brand that's coming up. I just love the theming behind them. I love the way the shade names are. I love how they're like affirmations. I think Danessa as a person is super sweet and super creative. At least that's how she comes across when you see her. My Lightwork palettes, I couldn't declutter them. And then last, see, these are in. These are kind of sneaking in. And it might be premature for me to be putting these in there because I've acquired both of them very recently. And one of them I've only used once. But if it's anything like the other one, then I'm going to feel the same. It's the same formula. I'll just show them to you. Let me stop jabbering on. Right. I couldn't just pick one. Poppy Quiet and Grackle Chat. And if I had Poppy Storm, I'd probably put that in there as well. Can you see them both? Yeah, there you go. I couldn't just pick one. If I had to at a push, and it's probably only because I've used it more, I don't know if things were changed once I've used the other one more, but I probably would pick Grackle Chat. In the monitor here, that's green, but then I look at it head on. Well, I look at it from this angle, it's purple. I know I did this one, I did the Grackle Chat video, but just bear with me here. And then I turn it and it's purple. This flashing feather state, you can see that, so look at it there. And look at it in the mirror. It's just stunning. And I think possibly for flashing feathers alone, but then I don't know, because there's Poppy Cry in here. I know I haven't for the whole video, but I'm gonna have to now. Flashing feathers, and that's Poppy Cry. And actually I've been intrigued. Oh my word. Good Lord. They are just beautiful. And to those on the lid together, this guy's gonna have to be done. Just look at it. I've mixed those a little bit, but that's Silk Light Full Glam Poppy. Poppy gem there in the middle. It's just beautiful. Ooh. And that's it swatched on my arm. Squirrel. Oh, they're just so pretty. Right, one more and then I'll stop. One more. Grackle Stare. If I'm doing one more, I think it's got to be Grackle Stare. Just hang on. So I turn this light off. I don't know if that will. Yeah, that's better. Just look at that. Titanium Foxes. Titanium Foxes is one of those brands I can see myself buying every single thing that they bring out, because if they're anything like that, I want it. Just stunning. Just to give you an indication of why I couldn't just pick one, because that's, yeah, so that's Grackle Chat, 1, 2, 3, and then the rest Poppy Quiet. And I still want to experiment more with layering in the way that Clara does with these shades. Those are the palettes that I would not be able to bring myself to declutter. I would think that they would speak for themselves. Maybe some of them not so much. You might think, Gem, really? Are you sure about that? Grackle Chat. Poppy Quiet, Lightwork 6, Lightwork 5, Longing by Rido Mineralscapes, New Zealand Stargazing, Metropolis, Jackie Aina, Levion Rose, and Urban Decay Electric. Those are 11 palettes that I 100% could never bring myself to declutter. I mean, I'd struggle with all the rest. I would struggle, but at a push I could. These ones, no. They are my babies. They are my babies. What in your collection would you never be able to part with? I'm curious. Have you got anything? I can't put these down now. Have you got anything in your palette collection that you think to yourself, never in a million years? Like someone could offer you, maybe not offer you a ridiculous amount of money, maybe for anything that's limited edition that you can't get anymore. But is there anything where you would just, no? If someone said, oh, I'll give you 100 quid for that, no. I mean, obviously if it's a palette that you can still get and it's only 30 quid, you probably would. But on the whole, is there anything that you own that you could just imagine you could never get it back? That's the scenario. You could never get it back. Could you declutter it? I'm curious. Have we got anything in common? Is there anything that you're surprised to see in here? Is there anything that you're surprised not to see in here? I'm curious. And just honourable mentions, and I think it's just because they're almost too new. I'm saying there, really it's just one of them. But Artitude Cosmetics Urban Neutrals. That is a stunning palette. I haven't used it enough for it to qualify, but give me a bit more time and possibly when I redo this, Urban Neutrals from Artitude Cosmetics might make an appearance in here. Curious to know, what are your prized palettes? I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch, and hopefully I'll see you again in a video in a not too distant future. Take care. Bye. And I know, give it 6 months to 12 years, maybe 12 years? Did I just say 12 years? Give it 6